Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Glint Standard. And today we are talking about budgeting for an agency. So let's get on it. Hi, I'm Erayne, and I am sitting beside the owner of Glint Advertising, Craig Lloyd. Can I?
Yeah,
Did I almost not say your name? My goodness.
I felt like you were pausing for impact. That's what it felt like.
I think so too. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, pausing for impact. That's good.
And today we're going to talk about budgeting for an agency.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've been around for 25 years, it's something that's very important.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
only for your business, but also for the clients that you're serving and that you're advocates for. And so this is all going to be focused on Craig's experiences, what he's learned. And you guys, before we get into it all, I'm going to tell you what we will cover so that you can either fast forward to the parts that you want to hear or stay with us the whole time. We're going to talk about what is a budget, simple and plain. We're going to talk about the components of a budget. So, what should be each line item in a budget? We will definitely hit on goals and financial goals. Um, and then we will talk about allocation of some of those resources that are contained within your budget. We will talk about contingency planning. And if COVID taught us one thing, it taught us to be ready for the unexplained, the unprepared, those moments that catch you off guard. So contingency planning is really important. And then finally, we will talk about maintaining that budget and tracking and adjusting it where needed, because as we all know, friends, you don't create a budget and it just stays the way it is at all. It is a living, breathing document that ebbs and flows. So yeah, that's a lot. You have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I'm picking up on this.
A lot of
I
responsibility.
thought I was just going to say hi.
Yeah, I know. Well, I will tell you that in most organizations that you're a part of, budgeting is important. As
Yeah.
everybody knows, I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and we have a chapter here in Fort Worth. I was the president of it, and our budget pretty much led everything that we did. We needed to make sure that it was balanced. We needed to make sure that allocations were in the right way. But there's one sorority member, and she's probably our oldest in our chapter. She's about 85, 86, Doris Ann. And she would always say that your budget, and she's a former accountant, she would always say that your budget is just, like I said before, this living, breathing document that you adjust and you adapt to certain situations. And it was a plan. I loved for her just when she used to say it's a plan, it's a roadmap to execution. What do you think about that comment and how Doris Ann views the budget?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. That's exactly what it is. And I think when you're dealing specifically with marketing, advertising, branding, whatever that piece is, as you start to develop concept and direction and try to hit your audience, that can change from month to month. Where they are, what they do, how they do it. Now you can get a foundational piece, and that's what that budget's about. It's about getting a foundational piece of money in place to support the things you're trying to do throughout the year. Having a goal that you want to achieve with that money, but also understanding that as you go through that year, that goal may change for numerous reasons. If you've been in business for 2 or 3 years at least, you probably have already felt this in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, haven't we seen this?
I mean, it's so hard,
Just-
and for an agency,
Yeah.
you can't be so rigid that you don't bend. So that's not what we talk about doing. We're not doing it. It has to be on here. That's not a good partnership. You have to ebb and flow. Now, I think where you can get a little gray in that area a little bit is if you keep it as this is a foundational impact and you talk about it too loosely, it doesn't become important to stay on point. And you can kind of run everywhere, and all of a sudden you kind of lose your focus, your purpose of the year. And a budget drives a lot of that, just like your marketing plan would, right? But you also can't be so rigid that you're not willing to bend. What is the goal? Are we in it together? Are we trying to achieve the same thing? And does that change? Okay, well let's work through that. What's the impact?
Yeah.
And you talked about contingency earlier, right? That plays a big part in being able to do that. Because we can be really rigid sometimes, like we have to stick to this is the best thing for you, but the client can be too, like we have to change, we have to go a different path. No, we need to stick here because this is what we said we would do. It happens on both sides, so finding that good partnership, super important. So the budget, what the budget is, it's your foundational piece to say, this is what I'm going to invest this year to put my name for my company, my product out there and have people buy, basically. That's what we want to do, and this is what it's going to cost us.
Why do you think that, I'm just going to say people, for lack of a better word.
People are a big part of
Why,
it.
I know. Why do you think people are so reluctant to create a marketing budget in businesses and organizations?
I think some of
don't
it's commitment.
You think this happens
It
a lot?
happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's usually with less seasoned people, because as you start to do this longer, you see the value in it. And that's a learned trait. If your leadership has gone through it, they teach that trait, so you have to start to trust it even if you don't know it.
True.
But I think commitment's a big piece of it. I said I would do this, now I have to do it.
Yeah.
And if you do that, and it is money, what's my result? What's my result? What's my result? Things need time to build still, but work has to be done before you actually make that impact.
Right.
That's what makes that challenging sometimes. So I think commitment's a big piece of it. And I think you've got 5 or 6 different people speaking in your ear. It could be a CEO, it could be a CFO, could be sales.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, this isn't working, this isn't that. And nobody's trusting the process. Nobody's really understanding the process. So everyone has to believe in what we're trying to do and give it time to work.
I think our mission here is that marketing is a part of operations, and it should be
big
thought
time.
that way. In any business school that you go to, probably most of them, I'm not going to say all, I'm not going to have the absolutes out there, but most business schools, marketing is a part of their course offerings.
Smart.
And so it's contained within the business school.
You know why that's important? Because if it's not, you may have the best run business in the world. Nobody knows it's there. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
You can't retain good people. You have no income.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself out there. And putting yourself out there is also an uncomfortable thing. So I think commitment and putting yourself out there for success or failure, and having the confidence to know I'm doing my very best in what this is and I believe in it.
Yeah.
And if you have that, the other two, be commitment and exposure, become a little easier to deal with. So
It is no longer the icing on the cake. It is the cake.
absolutely.
It is the cake.
It is.
Okay, getting back, because obviously
I
we
ramble,
will
I
go
know,
off
I
on,
ramble.
Well, but me too. We will go off on this tangent about how important marketing and advertising is to business operations. But let's get back to the budget and the components of a budget. And I know that here at Glint, we budget every day. For our clients, we're always looking at the budget and reallocating where needed, that sort of thing. So what should our listeners, what pieces should they include in their next budget?
So I think you have to have margins in there. You know, I'll speak kind of broadly to some degree, and then we can get into some details. But margins are really important because those margins are what are going to keep you in budget, no matter what work you're doing, whether you change or not.
Right.
And it's okay for that margin to shift a little bit if it needs to, but it can get to a point where you have to go, this is dangerous now, either for performance or because it's going to impact us financially. And that's on the agency side and on the client side. If you're looking at that, you can reallocate resources however you need to within that, because all of that is driven to that point. Now, we have 2 margins we look at. We look at fee margin, we also look at profit margin. Other companies may have different margins, but all of them are going to have a profit margin. Should have one. And that's what you're looking towards. So if you shift dollars from, say, a marketing effort to a branding effort, well, that profit margin is going to change because branding is going to bring you awareness and it'll make your marketing better. But if you're shifting dollars out of the same budget, that's going to affect that overall impact of that budget. That's why that's so important to do. And as you start to get the line item backed in, on a marketing budget, we'll stick with that. You want to have key factors that you want to touch. You have to have 3 points of integration. Every business does, even if it's not in marketing. It could hit merchandising, right? Your retail side of it. It could be inventory. Those are certain things that every business is going to have at least 3 minimum. Most are probably going to have at least 6. That all those things are going to be affected by this budget, so they all have to be included in this budget. Like how does it integrate with all of that? Now you do the marketing side. It's digital. It's traditional. It's branding. There's a lot of places you can touch. Some are one-off projects, and then they're done. But some continue month to month, so you can't shift dollars from that.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Friends, you can definitely see where his mind is. But I'm going to take us a little bit back to Budgeting 101.
Okay.
And I'm talking about revenues
Okay.
and expenses.
Okay.
In terms of your...
Are you establishing a budget?
Yes, establishing a budget.
Gotcha.
But no, that was very good.
No. I get where you're going.
We're going to do an advanced session.
Yeah, if we do creating a budget, that's probably a little bit different, but starting points.
Yeah, starting points.
Many different ways you can do this. What's your revenue goal? What are your expenses? What's left? What's it going to cost to achieve those goals? And then you invest that in. And that can be by product.
Yes.
Each product has a marketing component of maybe it's $1 or 50 cents or something into each product sale. And that starts to build a marketing budget. It could be on gross revenue, and you can maybe manage that quarterly. So a percentage of your gross revenue, say it's 20%, 10%, whatever that is, can go towards this is what our revenue is or what we expect it to be. So we're going to allocate this percentage to marketing. So now you know exactly what it is that you need to spend, and then you'll start to chop it up like I was talking about before.
Yeah.
So those are 2 good ways from a product and maybe even a service approach of establishing a budget and the ways to go about it. And you can push, of course, margins against all of that.
Right.
But that's a good starting point
Just
anyway.
setting it up. If I sat down in front of my computer and I was creating a budget, what does it look like initially?
You're starting out
at step 1.
Yeah, step 1, you just weigh how much am I going to make this year? How much do I want to make? Marketing 101 says set this aside. Typically, it's 10% of whatever your revenue goals are. That's what you're going to invest, and you break that down monthly or however you want to achieve that.
Yeah.
So that's an easy way to do it.
10%, everybody. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about goals. Love to hear goals that you've had for Glint and how they've changed from year 1 to year 25.
Yeah.
And then perhaps if there's a little bit of extra time, we can talk about future goals.
Yeah, so as far as how it relates to budgeting, when you first start out, it's basically me, right? And as you start to grow, you need more resources because you want to expand your offerings. You don't want to get too broad with that, but you also want to hire people to start making the agency better and making people come to the agency because of the agency. So as you start to do that, even with the business, as it starts to grow, now you have departments and you have people. Now you're taking that overall budget, you're allocating mini budgets to each department, and you're putting somebody responsible for managing those budgets. The idea is they all achieve what their goals are and they spend their budget, because you don't want people to not spend their budget.
Right.
The goal of budgeting is not to save money. This is not like on a household, right? So
boy, did I learn that in credit unions.
yeah, because if you don't spend it, you're not going to get any more.
No.
But if you achieve great things and say, I can do more of this, but you got to give me some more, you can't say no to that because the company had to have grown. So you got to do it.
Yeah.
So that's an easy way to start managing the budget. So as we've grown through our 25 years, those are the things that really start to impact. It's people, it's infrastructure, departments, and services. It all starts to allocate, to change the way you think about all of that, right?
And then you have those surprises. So if we talk about realistic financial goals, let's talk about COVID and how your budget changed during that period and right after.
Yeah, so budgeting for the business, we've always held a higher standard than a lot. Most companies will hold 3 to 4 months back. What we can call it contingency, slush fund, whatever you want to call it. for those emergencies that never happen. You know, and here we are. We're going 20 years in business, 22 years in business, and never had to touch it. But it's always been there.
That's
and it's
so good.
hard not to touch it because it's just sitting there as profit.
Yeah.
But you have to build your business in knowing you need that. Now, we put a 6 month in, and that's what got us through COVID. It's the only reason we got through without laying people off. And we're one of a few agencies that I know of that didn't have to do that. And I'm proud of that, but we used all of it.
Did you start doing that at the beginning?
The very beginning. Because
that probably made it more of a...
You can plan for business, but you can't plan for all of it, the unknowns.
Yeah.
And COVID was a big thing, so it's easy to jump on. They're small things. Say your equipment fails, and you have maybe you have a leak in your office, and you've got a presentation that day for 10 people. Well, now you got to go get a hotel room somewhere and change the location. You got to move. You got to do something. You didn't plan for that. It's a small thing, but it impacts things, especially if you're small. I mean, there's $500, $600, $700 that you weren't planning on spending. What does that do to your margin, right?
Yeah.
So you think about those, and contingency is important for budgeting for marketing and work, but also for your business because of those unknowns.
Absolutely.
Really, really important to know that's
it is
coming.
Very important, and obviously you have a testimony. Okay, let's talk about ROI and how, maybe the importance of prioritizing ROI within your budget.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. It's not necessarily the most important thing. A lot of that is in the beginning, setting up your goals and expectations.
Yeah.
And aligning those correctly. And it's easy that those don't change along the way unless you've changed your budget allocations. Because something may be working really well and you get excited about it, so you just start throwing money at it, and then it could fizzle off.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're not making any money. You can get so worried, like it's not performing well enough, and so you cut it off. Now you've wasted all that money. You've really got to look at ROI from a long-term perspective. What are you trying to achieve? How are you trying to grow your business? It's not always just about revenue. It could be about cutting expenses. That still makes you more profitable. It could be about our goal in 5 years is to have our own place, because then we can control our expenses in this way. It gives us more freedom as a company to move and invest into growth.
So it really has to align with those goals.
And that's where the operations, like you said in the very beginning, why that's so important for all of that to be aligned.
Be in sync, yes.
Because it's all expensive, percentage-wise. It doesn't matter if it's $100 or $200,000. It's percentage of your business, so the impact is that percentage, not necessarily that number.
Right.
So you also, at the end, if your idea of ROI is about we need to have X number of customers that provide this much money per customer by the end of the year, then you're looking at that ROI measurement quarterly to make sure you're on track to do that. And if not, you can start to make decisions.
Right.
But you got to keep looking at it, because if you don't, you're going to get to the end of the year and it's just going to be a
gonna
surprise.
Be out of whack. Yeah.
And like, whew, we got lucky.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Out of whack. Right. Okay. Well, let me see. What am I missing? Oh yeah. Tracking and adjusting and making sure that everything is in sync. So it's kind of a good segue from what you just talked about.
Yeah, it can take you so many different ways. The thing about having, and I'm going to tie this to contingency a little bit too. So say your contingency is 10% of your revenues, your marketing budgets, whatever that is. We have a contingency here as well as the agency. So if an opportunity comes in front of us that we're not prepared for, we know it's a good opportunity, we can do something about it and move. Versus, I wish we could really do that, wish we had the money for it. If you're not planning for those wins, you're never going to be able to grab them. And you can build, and you want to build towards having that chunk of money is the best way to say it, so you can do something with it. Because those opportunities do happen. And you go 5 years from now and you look back and go, man, if we'd have just been able to figure out how to move on that thing, we should have.
It's lost.
And sometimes you take out a loan for it, right? And you invest in yourself and believe in what you're trying to do that. And you can also build that income in for yourself to use it from there. So then you don't need a loan, right? Excuse me. So those are some reasons that, planning for the future, contingencies really fall into place.
But in terms of how often you're looking at expenses and budgets, and again, I can answer it pretty much. I mean, we're in it like weekly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's really normal for us. I know our sorority was in it pretty much every week as well. So I think those are best practices for organizations and for agencies, businesses, is to stay connected.
Yeah, you should always know where the numbers are. You don't have to have all the details. I look at it every month. I have an accountant. We also have a CPA. They do 2 different jobs.
That's important.
They're really good, and you have to trust them, but it's also your responsibility to make sure they are doing a good job. And it's great, and if they are, then you get through it quickly and you get what you need. You can move on. And if something's off, you think that's off. Let's talk about this, and it's controlled. What you don't want to get in the habit of is just they got it. And so many companies get in trouble with that, and it's not because they're taking advantage. Sometimes they just lose focus sometimes too, and you got to keep that stuff on point. Now I think it's different when you're corporate versus independent ownership, like a private company. Private company, those dollars impact everything. Corporations, there's boards, there's shareholders, there's all this. The money's big. So not being totally on top of it, there's room to ebb and flow through that thing. You get the big dollars, it stands out. Private companies, the small stuff even stands out, right? And it starts to affect so much, but it's just a percentage game. That's all it is. But you have to look at it.
You know, Oprah taught us that lesson a long time ago about making sure you're on top of, your things and not just your people, you know?
And it's not about trust. And I think it's important to say that it's not about trust. It's about making sure we're still all staying on the same path. And sometimes they can't call you out. You're like, okay, thank you. I might be frustrated at the time, but it's good.
One of the things that I also like to do in terms of sticking with the budget, and this is also Simpleton Budget 101, is recording your estimates of how much something costs and your actuals. Just that simple step.
True.
Really helps you stay in tune with where your expenses are going and how you're recovering those expenses. So anyway, that's Erayne's tip. I think it's really important to see those numbers as well. And then trends. Trends are also very important.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk probably hours on this if you really get into the details of it all. But I think we're both really good at that side of it and understanding the importance of it all. But yeah, it's...
What I also like that we do, and the last thing I know, we could talk about this fun stuff all day, but one of the things that I like that Glint does is when we present a proposal to prospective clients, we always have a breakdown of that budget through a visual graphic, a pie chart, so they know exactly where their money is going, right down to percentages. And then at that point, we can make sure if that aligns with their goals and their expectations. And it's just such a quick and easy thing to do that I don't think a lot of other agencies reveal, maybe.
But I think part of that is maybe a lack of understanding of why that's important.
Yeah.
You know, you coming from the brand side helps us with that a lot, because we know why it's important. And if those percentages shift a lot visually, you're going to see that very quickly, right? But I think it helps. But also for us, it's all about integration. Are we hitting 1, 2, 3, 4 different points of integration? And it tells you how much your budget's going to each one broadly. Then you can get into the details if you want to.
It definitely helps manage expectations.
Absolutely, I think so.
Well, okay. Did you get your fill of budgeting for an agency, an organization, or maybe you're a small business owner? I know, we love to talk about it. Thank you, Craig, for joining. And also, thanks for talking about Glint and how it has sustained over 25 years. I think that's really helpful. You can find the Glint standard on any social media platform. Do I have to list them out for you? And then also, if you visit our website at
Say that 3 times fast.
glintadv.com, you can also catch it. And thanks for joining us. Can't wait till the next time we get to talk.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Glint Standard. You can see more episodes here or click the logo below to follow our channel, and please hit the thumbs up if you like this episode.